You might not drink, but it's time for AMD Fine Wine, because Nvidia just said F you to gamers with the 5080 series launch. The 5080 was not much faster than the 4080 Super in terms of raw actual performance, with the only gains coming from DLSS 4, something that Nvidia has pulled before with the RTX 4060 release. This stuff is super duper annoying, but it also makes the last gen GPUs like the 4080 Super and the 7900XT become really interesting prospects, because you can get one for a very good price on the used market, and retailers will likely be clearing stock for them because they're older and supposedly might be released. As a result, a lot of people are flocking to these older graphics cards, and one of the very popular options are the AMD 7900XT and 7900XTX GPUs, because they have a lot of great rasterization raw performance. So for people who don't care about ray tracing, it's really potent, and a mega butt ton of VRAM, meaning it's more future-proof, which is really important these days thanks to UE5 allowing developers to be horrible at optimizing their games. And this video is exactly about the 7900XT. As someone who's been using the 7900XT since day one, I think I'm in a good position to tell you the whole experience, to hopefully inform you as to whether you should buy one. Let's start off with performance. And what you can expect with a 7900XT is not really ray tracing greatness, but ray tracing decentness and amazing rasterization performance. If you're someone that doesn't care about ray tracing, or the games that you play aren't obsessively about RT, then it's actually a really brilliant GPU to get, even at 4K gaming. Thanks to that big 20 gig VRAM buffer, you can run really high textures and run really high resolutions and not be too limited, which is great. It also means better future proofing. But the moment you turn on ray tracing, you'll be in for a hell of a fright, as your frames are going to drop by 80% almost always, because ray tracing on AMD GPUs are just not that good. The thing is though, while the 7900XT makes for a solid 4K mid to high end rasterization card, it's only kind of like a entry level, get the job done 4K ray tracing card. I personally think the sweet spot for getting a 7900XT is for 1440p gaming, whether it be 1440p normal resolution or 1440p ultra wide. Because with its performance, you get a very high-end experience today on 1440p with the 7900XT, but better future proofing to still have a decent experience 3 to 4 years down the road with that 20 gigs of VRAM. 7900XT definitely struggles at 4K, especially games that only do ray tracing, because it's so weak at that. There are already games that the 7900XT struggles at in 4K today, so that list is just going to get bigger and bigger, meaning it's going to be way more future-proof to use the 7900XT on 1440p than 4K. And if you use it on 4K, you probably have to get an upgrade in like 2 years to keep up with the latest games, if that's what you want to do. I also did do a couple of benchmarks so you can have a quick short idea of what you can expect with latest drivers and latest performance. Do note this is all run on stock settings on a NBA cooler. In Black Myth Wukong, you get an average of 41 FPS in the benchmark when you set everything to cinematic with no FSR and no ray tracing at 1440p. But cinematic mode and very high settings really don't look all that different. So if you just set it to very high and turn on 90% scaling with FSR, which looks really almost as good as the cinematic mode, you get an average FPS of a much tolerable 99. In Cyberpunk, 1440p max settings, no ray tracing, no FSR, no acceleration in any sort of form, you get an average of 110 FPS. Do note the local shadow mesh quality settings were set to medium because I forgot to turn that to high, but 110 FPS in Cyberpunk at 1440p with no ray tracing, but maxed out everywhere else. Cyberpunk's a very good looking game, even without ray tracing on, and this is a brilliantly good experience at 100 FPS. But the thing is, turn on FSR 3, set it to quality with no ray tracing, and now you have an average of like 135 FPS. If you really do want ray tracing though on Cyberpunk at 1440p, you can turn on ray tracing and set ray trace lighting to medium, and with FSR 3.1 set to quality, you get 66 FPS in the benchmark, which is fine. It's acceptable. But it's a rasterization card. It's not a card you buy for ray tracing, and I personally think it's still a little too stuttery for my tastes. But yeah, I think the performance numbers are pretty good. But anyone switching to an AMD graphics card will have one very important question. Is it stable? How are the drivers? And I have to say, having owned this card for its entire lifespan, the first year was really quite bad. I was getting random crashes, random blackouts in Valorant, and I couldn't fix them no matter what until I updated my motherboard BIOS. And it will be good for like 2-3 months. There will be a new motherboard BIOS that releases or something, and then it will come back again, and then I just have to update my motherboard BIOS, and then it will be fine. I have to report though, in the last 6 months, absolutely stable. No motherboard BIOS required, no fancy thing to figure out, no crashes, no randomness. I just have to update my drivers consistently and I'm good. It's what they call AMD fine wine technology. They take really long time to figure out their drivers, but when they do, it's really nice and really good value, and I feel like I'm very glad to wait it out. But yes, if you buy it in 2025, rest assured, it's going to be pretty stable and pretty solid. Maybe not as stable still as an NVIDIA GPU experience, but it's stable enough that I think most people with a slight tolerance for bullshit can handle no problem. How about thermals and power, you might ask? This is a hot card for sure. It's 300 watts, and this reference cooler frankly isn't very good. And honestly, I had my GPU running with a lower power limit, minus I think 10%, for a long period of time because I just couldn't stand the temps. They were stressing me out. I was getting an average temperature of like 85 degrees Celsius in game, which is pretty normal, but the junction temperature was hitting 95, 100, sometimes even 105 degrees Celsius, which I just felt was too damn hot. So I lowered the power limit and lost some performance for fear of longevity of the GPU. But guess what? There's a fix. I didn't know about this fix back then, and I was too lazy to research about it, but now that I have more free time, I looked it up and turns out I could just use PTM7950. And after repasting the GPU with 7950, as well as reapplying the thermal pads and thermal putty with Thermal Grizzly basic putty, which I was able to get significantly better temperatures on my memory, my GPU, and most importantly, my GPU junction temps. My GPU hotspot temps came down all the way to about 85 degrees Celsius, and my GPU average temps were down at 75 degrees Celsius stable after a few hours of gaming on Cyberpunk, which is very, very solid. That's like a 10, 15 degrees Celsius drop. If you are having thermal issues with your 7900XT, or you're getting a used GPU that's been around for a while, I strongly recommend replacing the paste with PTM7950 and replacing the pads with new thermal putty. Super, super recommended. If you can get a used or new 7900XT that's similar in price to a used or new 4070 Super, 4070 Ti roughly, then absolutely snag it. It's going to be great value for money. If you can get it for the price of about a 4070 Ti Super, then it's relatively decent of value. You're not getting anything out of this world, but it's pretty okay. If it's more than a 4070 Ti Super and it's approaching a 4080 in terms of price, just get a 4080. Considering it's AMD GPU with not a lot of demand, you probably can get a very good deal on these, and with the big VRAM, there probably might be the better long-term choice with better long-term future-proofness. I love my 7900XT, I don't regret it at all, and I think you'll probably enjoy getting one too, especially if you're gaming on 1440p and don't care about ray tracing like me. Hope that was helpful. Subscribe.